The fear of long words. Yes, whoever coined such a long name for this phobia was cruel. I've heard that joke 1,000 times. But do you know what isn't funny? The story of my fear. It was 2005, and I was 10 years old. My friends and I were watching Mary Poppins. Amy, Stephanie, Brandon, my little brother, and me. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, I proudly said, pointing at the piece of paper on which I'd just written the word. Amy beamed. "You're so smart, James." I caught Brandon eyeing her coldly, but I pretended not to notice. I just thought him to be troubled, unloved at home by his drunken dad, envious of my relationship with Amy, angry at the world, all of the above. But there was more to Brandon than that, or less, depending on how you look at it. And however you look at it, what happened next was a horror beyond words. In fact, after all of this time, I've finally decided that there isn't a word for what happened next. And I know plenty of words. That's what started everything. "James," Brandon said as we were walking out of school, "what would you say to a spelling bee at my house?" I shrugged. "Sure, I guess." He was quiet for the duration of the walk home. As I said, he was always an unusual, unnerving boy. I have to admit that he seemed particularly unhinged on this particular evening. I noticed that his driveway was empty as we approached the front door. "Do your parents know I'm coming over?" I asked. "Let's go up to the den," he said, averting my question and guiding me upstairs. Are we allowed, Brandon?" I asked, as he pulled on the string to the attic door. "Where are your parents?" "They're away," Brandon said, beginning to climb the ladder. "Come on, it's time for the spelling bee." He turned on the light in the attic, and I followed him into what I can only describe as the first of many traumatic memories. Chained to plastic chairs, yes, chained by a 10-year-old, were my friends and my brother, Stephanie, Amy, and Tom. They were all crying. What have you done?" I squealed. "Let them go." "Did you not wonder where everyone had gone during our lunch break, James?" Brandon asked. "I thought you were smart." "James," Tom bawled, "I want to go home." "I'm going to untie you," I said, striding towards his chair. "1 second." But Brandon lunged at me, pinning me to the rickety floorboards of the attic and wafting a multi-buttoned remote before my eyes. "That isn't how the spelling bee works, James," Brandon said, dark eyes burrowing into my soul. "If you step out of line again, I press this button. And you don't want to know what it does to your friends and your poor little brother." I'm not little," Tom whimpered. Brandon leaned towards my ear and whispered quietly, "By the time we're finished, he'll be the littlest thing you've ever seen." "Just tell me what to do," I said. Brandon smiled wickedly. 3 words. That's it. The world's easiest spelling bee. A word for each of them. Stephanie, Amy, and Tom. Spell each word correctly, and I set them free. "And if I fail?" I asked. "It's not a pass or fail situation, James. You'll spell each word letter by letter. As soon as you get a letter incorrect. If you get a letter incorrect. I'll tell you the correct letter, and repeat the word so you can continue." "But what's the catch?" I asked quietly. "Well, there's a price for my assistance," he said thoughtfully. "It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You'd be using a lifeline. I'd have to, creatively, write the correct letter on the whiteboard for you. You lose if... well, we'll get to that." Brandon gestured to a whiteboard stand to the side of my 3 loved ones. I couldn't see a marker pen. "Right, shall we start with Stephanie?" Brandon asked. "Wait," I whispered. "The word is..."
"Pulchritudinous."
I inhaled deeply, preparing to best Brandon at his demented idea of a prank, but I had no idea as to how deep his insanity ran. I was about to find out. P. U. L. C. H. R. I. D. T. Not D, Brandon said. Then something horrifying happened. Brandon produced a pair of head trimmers from a small duffel bag on the floor and took long strides towards Stephanie. He clipped. She wailed as 5 fingers were severed, one by one, from her left hand. I screamed, as did Amy and Tom. A fountain of blood gushed from the stubs on Stephanie's hand, and Brandon sinisterly shaped each of the 5 fingers into various formations. He was spelling the word with her body parts, sellotaping P, U, L, C, and H to the whiteboard, much to my horror. "Need more," Brandon hissed, a deranged glint in his eyes. Stephanie was too weakened by blood loss to resist Brandon as he clipped away at her right hand, severing those fingers and moulding them into letters too. Our cries of horror must have carried a good mile, but Brandon's family lived on an isolated plot of land. "There we go. R, I, and T. T, James, not D. Pulchritudinous. Go on. P, U, L, C, H, R, I, T, U, D, I, N, O, U, S. Wow, James. Just wow. Second try. You really are a genius. And I'm a man of my word. Brandon pressed a smaller button beneath the big red one on the remote, and Stephanie's chains loosened. Bawling, she fell to her knees and began to crawl across the attic floor, holding her stumped, fingerless, bloodied hands before her. But it was already too late. She didn't even make it to the attic door before crumpling lifelessly and staring at me with unblinking eyes. Most unfortunate. Anyway, moving on to Amy. The word is pneumono-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, Brandon said. Still unwilling to grapple with the terror of Stephanie's death, I found myself collapsing to my knees and spelling Amy's word before my brain had even caught up. I was in shock. P, N, E, U, M, O, N, O, U, L, T, R, A, M, I, C, R, O, L. L? What? Brandon said. The correct letter after O is S. This is going to be a long one, James. I could only observe from my knelt position on the floor as Brandon spelt out the 18 letters I'd done correctly, plus the 19th that he revealed. 19 body parts. Can you imagine my horror as I watched Brandon inflict the same terror upon Amy that he inflicted upon Stephanie? And when he had 10 fingers on his whiteboard, what did he use next? Not toes, as one might have hoped, to give Amy a fighting chance at surviving. No. He clipped her arms. I screeched at the top of my lungs, eyes swimming with terrified tears as Amy's head swiftly lolled forwards, blood gushing from the open wounds on her torso. And yet Brandon continued to hack up her dismembered body parts, contorting them into each letter of the word and sellotaping them to the whiteboard. PNEUMONOULTRAMICROS. Well, I would say to continue, James, but it appears you failed. Poor Amy isn't moving, is she? That's how you lose, James, Brandon Foe sniffled, walking over to her limp corpse and puppeteering her lips. You're oh so smart, James. Why couldn't you spell the word properly? I wailed inconsolably, horrified by the unfathomably and graphically gruesome spectacle before me. As I collapsed into a ball on the ground, my tormentor continued. Now, according to the Oxford Dictionary, pneumono-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis is the longest word in the English language, Brandon said, unfazed by my hyperventilation. But did you know that there exists another word? A far longer word. I sobbed, unable to breathe properly, nostrils clogged with snot bubbles and cheeks strewn with tears. The titin protein is the largest protein in the human body, which is why its full name is such an obscenely long word. 189,819 letters, to be exact. So, that brings us to Tom, your sweet little brother. And his word is, well, it's far too long for a video such as this. Imagine how many times I failed to spell a 189,819 letter long word correctly. And though I'd accepted that I couldn't save my baby brother, I hadn't expected Brandon to make Tom's end so horribly drawn out. The monster plucked minuscule strips of flesh from my brother's body to form the letters of the 189,819 letter word. I kept trying to spell it, watching as Tom bled out hauntingly slowly. He sobbed for the first hour or so, before uttering little more than the occasional hoarse grunt or inaudible whisper. Letter-shaped wounds formed where my brother's skin had been, and Brandon continued to spell the word along the floor after he'd run out of room on the whiteboard. It took hours for my brother to finally fall still, but Brandon didn't stop, even after Tom's death. After I lost, he made me finish the word. It took days. We used up every last piece of my brother's body to spell out the full word. Limbs, eyes, innards, and bones. I don't know why I kept spelling. There was nothing that Brandon held over me. He'd taken everything. My only explanation is that sheer shock drove me onwards, horror at what I'd witnessed. When the word was finished, Brandon silently left the attic. I eventually returned to the real world, in a sense, and called the police. It's hard to explain what followed. I know that Brandon's parents were found in their bed, throats slit. Their cars were in the garage. The demented boy has been missing for 18 years, and my town has never been the same. I've never been the same. Even as I say these words, I don't see letters. Not really. I see body parts.